I guess this is episode 1 of the Small Town Producer Podcast.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for checking it out. If you listened to the trailer that I put out, I don't know how many people still listen to podcast trailers or if you just dive right in, but basically this is just me trying to connect, me and Lukeblood trying to connect and just figure out, how to make our way in the music world in kind of a smaller scene like Boise, which is where we're located. And so hopefully if this applies to you, you just learn something from it, connect with someone maybe. That's really the goal, just try and learn and connect.
Yeah, totally. I think there's kind of an interesting perspective from being in the middle of the struggle, not having a lot of subscribers or people interested in what you're doing per se, and not being in a big city like LA or Atlanta or whatever it is, and kind of trying to figure it out as you go and making note on what works and what doesn't work and talking with other people about it and stuff. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I go by Kana Beats. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, whatever. It's all at Beats by Kana. And then on YouTube, I'm going to be putting up the podcast there as well, hopefully with some video. If you want to check that out, just Kana Beats. And then probably put it up on yours as well.
Yeah. So Lukeblood is what I go by on. I think I'm pretty much searchable on YouTube and Spotify and SoundCloud and stuff, but Instagram is at Lukeblooded. But yeah, I'd for sure want to post it as well.
Yeah. So, connect with us on there. And then, of course, the podcast will be everywhere podcasts are distributed, hopefully. Stitcher, Spotify, Apple. So,
yeah. And we can maybe just kind of jump into then a little bit the goal, I guess, for the podcast and who it's for, because we would like to get some guests on here. It's not just going to be us chatting it up every week.
Definitely.
And some other producers that we've met in the area. Some people hopefully from out of town. So maybe speak a little bit on what your vision is for, I guess, what people could get out of the podcast or what people can bring to the podcast.
Yeah, so I guess a little bit of the roadmap that I'm looking at right now for the podcast is I'm hoping, so for these first 2 episodes, I kind of want to introduce everybody to us, you and me, kind of our stories, where we come from, how we've been navigating the music scene so far, being from a town like Boise, trying to make it, and then hopefully down the road, gonna try to get. I want it to be interview based, so I'm definitely gonna try to get a lot of people in here. Hopefully, if we get enough people listening and they're sending in questions and stuff, maybe we could even just do like some Q&A stuff. But
yeah. I'm excited for it. We met probably just on Instagram, I think. Initially.
I was going to ask you how we met because I couldn't quite remember.
So here's how I remember it. There was that iconic beat challenge. No, it wasn't that. It was that was a shout out. It was the 7/6 beat challenge. They had those 2 samples, and it was flip these samples. You could win $100 or something like that. And you made a beat, and I made a beat, and several other people made a beat. And I saw yours, and I saw that you were in the area. And I'm not sure if you saw me too or something, but it was like right around that time that we first connected. And at that time, I probably knew like a couple producers in the whole state of Idaho who I had like talked to or tried to talk to. Because in my mind, it was like, there's not that many of us out here. I wasn't aware of that many of us. And so I reached out to you, and I think we just started chatting or whatever. And then I think it was when Sam Soul Music invited us over to his house that we first met up.
That was, my idea was he invited us. He invited me. And then I was like, hey, I also know this other guy because I had just met you on Instagram. And I was super excited because I'm like, there's someone else in the area that does music.
Right.
Like,
you're like the king of the meetup invite. Somebody invites you, and you like spread the word a little bit and bring someone else.
I like to try to get everybody going.
I think that's smart.
Yeah.
And then, so from that, we met in person. And then when we were talking there, we kind of realized, I think, that we are in similar positions as far as just kind of experience and drive and motivation and some of this stuff. And so we decided to do kind of a chat once a week or once every other week, just chat on Discord, voice chat if we couldn't meet up or anything like that. And so
hopefully these are kind of like that again.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I kind of missed those a little bit.
Right, me too.
Those were fun, yeah.
I think that kind of is probably how this happened, how Boise Beatmakers a little bit happened.
Definitely. You started talking about it in there, and I was like, dude, you just need to go for it.
Right.
Like,
so definitely, like, I don't know what. None of that would have happened if I hadn't connected.
Even this was created in there. We were talking because you, Boise Beatmakers, which we'll get into in a little bit once I am asking you questions, but it was so successful that I was like, you know, I had been a little hesitant to try something myself just because that's just my natural tendency. But like once I saw how successful it was for you and stuff and how much, you know, fun you were having and stuff, I was like, you know, what can I do to try to kind of make my imprint in the music space too?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that all of this has just kind of come from, or at least definitely been sped up by these side conversations we had where we're just bouncing ideas off each other, talking about kind of what goals we have, big picture and short term and that kind of thing. So that's actually been huge. And I don't know that, like we said, any of this would have started without that. So that's kind of how we got to know each other. But
I was also going to say that going back to what you were talking about connecting with each other just real quick, I think it also helped that we're kind of at the same like place in our lives a little bit, kind of similar. Like we're both married. We both have full-time jobs outside of doing this, and I think it was just kind of cool for us to meet someone else that was, and I mean, we're not like as young as some of the other producers that are around here that are, you know, like teens or whatever trying to do it. You know, we're I'm like 25, you just turned 30.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, I think there's something to that a little bit because I've kind of figured out, it took me 27 years, probably 28 years to realize like this is what I wanted to do for sure. Or this is what I'm going to be doing, whether or not it's like a career move. So I decided I want to be able to spend more time doing it, turn it into a career. And I think we just kind of were in a similar position as far as like our thinking about music, like what we wanted out of music. And I think, like you said, a lot of that probably is to do with we both had jobs, we've both been in school and this kind of thing, whereas maybe like a 20-year-old might not be, they like music or they think they want to do music, but they're not entirely sure what that looks like in their life because they've still got a lot of life to live.
just the life mindset. I think we were kind of on the same wavelength, so it was just nice.
But I want to talk about, I guess, kind of since this is your podcast episode, I want to talk a little bit about what you've done and just some goals and stuff I guess that you've got. So you've done some artist work. You've gotten some placements with artists both locally and non-locally, which are doing well, by the way. Some of the top plays on their projects, if I remember right, is some of the tracks that you worked on. Yeah. And also just collabs with other producers. I see you hitting people up and doing collabs. You're very serious about consistency and posting, having an online presence of some sort, posting on Instagram, posting on YouTube, content and kind of experimenting with that. But that consistency, I think, really stands out to me too. I noticed too that you seem to be very informed. I don't know if you're like a researcher type or what, but you're very up on like local artists, local producers. You're up on like industry trends. You're up on like the hot new artists that are coming out. Like I'm always like, oh dang, have you heard this track? And you say, yeah, that's so cool. I've been listening to that for a while, and like, you should also check out these other artists who are like even less known and stuff like that. So a couple things, those are just like a few standout things that I've noticed from you, but
appreciate it.
But kind of jumping back into, so that's kind of just to give everyone an idea, I guess, of where you're coming from. You didn't just start yesterday. You've worked with some artists, you've worked with some producers, putting out content. I want to jump back into that in a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about Boise, because we both live here in Boise. It's a small town, but it's not honestly as small as it used to be. It's growing a lot, and Boise is in Idaho, so everyone probably imagines it being way smaller than it is. What is how would you describe Boise to somebody who has no idea?
Boise. How would I describe it? I guess I would describe it as like a fast-growing town that's kind of at a identity crisis. It's not really sure what it wants to be yet. It's trying to figure out where it's kind of gonna align. And Boise, I was looking at some like stats of when I first moved here, just trying to figure out what Boise was like, and just to kind of give everyone like an idea of what it looked like. Like the minority population in Boise when we first moved here was like less than 2%. And it's gone up a lot since then. But so I think that's kind of an important thing to look at when you're looking at Boise. It's just the more people that come here from different backgrounds and everything, like it's going to be really cool to for everything to come together. I mean, you look at all the diversity of sound that originates in places that have all those different backgrounds, like whether that be in New York or LA, just for easy examples, but then also newer places like Portland popping up and stuff. Like, it's really awesome, and I think Boise's going to kind of start to go that route, I hope.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting observation. I hadn't thought about too much, but I think the way you said they have an identity crisis is interesting, and I think it's actually like a cool opportunity for the music scene a little bit and see where that goes. So I'm really excited to see that. But how long have you been in the area by chance? I don't know if I've asked you that before.
Yeah, so I actually was born in Wenatchee, Washington.
Okay.
But we moved here when I was 2. So
really?
I don't remember it at all.
Okay.
But so I've been here for 23 years then.
Gotcha.
So,
That's crazy. I didn't realize it had been that long. So growing up in the area, did you go to many concerts and stuff like that, or in the area, or get to be around live music scene or anything like that?
No. So funny enough, growing up, I grew up in a pretty religious household, and we were not allowed to listen to any hip hop whatsoever. So when I was young, I think I found hip hop because I got really into the NBA, and that was at the time of like Iverson and stuff, and like so hip hop culture was starting to get big in the NBA, and I was just so fascinated by it. I had no idea what it was, but all I knew was that these guys were so cool, and that was kind of what drove my love for basketball, which I played up until college. I played all through high school, and then I think my mom bought me like my earliest memory of hip hop is like my mom bought me these DVDs that you could buy in like Barnes and Noble, and it was called like Ankle Breakers DVDs, and it came with a soundtrack.
Okay, so it's like a dance DVD or something with a soundtrack. What is Ankle Breaker?
No,
so it is
crossover.
for okay, gotcha.
So it was basketball
theme. Did you realize that it had like this soundtrack on it?
I mean, I think she kind of knew,
yeah,
but I don't think she was aware that like a CD and it was specifically for.
Okay, it was a totally separate disc, just like literally a CD of music.
And so I remember I snuck it one time when I think she had taken like my siblings to like violin lessons or something. And so it was just me. And I went up and I grabbed the DVD and I snuck the CD in and I listened to it on my computer and I was like, I don't know what any of this stuff is. This is so cool. And it had like Common on it and like the Yin Yang Twins. And like, so that was like my earliest memory of hip hop.
Okay, nice. That's really interesting, and interestingly a little bit similar to my background. But talk about, I guess, like today music scene. What do you think, particularly in like hip hop local area stuff? Do you see anything really happening or potential for anything to happen? Yeah.
So going back to what you asked right before this, where you were like, what have you noticed in the local scene and stuff? I was like you. I spent a lot of time looking, like, because I just didn't know who was here. So, like, when I first decided I wanted to get into music, I thought that I wanted to actually rap. And so me and my brother did that for a little bit. But I mean, then I was like, I don't really like this because I don't like being on stage and stuff.
Okay.
But it just wasn't fun to me. But that was how I discovered producing.
Okay.
Because I was trying to do tracks for us, and I was like, this is a lot harder than it looks.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I was like, I kind of need to, if I'm going to focus on this, I'm going to focus on this completely. So I switched to just producing. But yeah, so during that time, though, when we were both trying to like find shows to play and stuff, like that was when I got kind of really into like trying to find who's here and just figure out who's in the area. And that was actually how I met like Y&M and stuff, which is one of the local groups here that I've been working with. And and that's kind of how, like, when I met you and you're like, how do you know everybody? I'm just like, I've been looking for years, like trying to figure out who everyone is. Right. Because there wasn't really like a centralized place for anyone.
What do you think that says about the culture in the area? I mean, nobody's talking, I guess.
I think it kind of speaks a little bit to like the identity crisis that I was saying, like, because Boise, it's growing, but we're still very much in like a rural mind state kind of. So like it's kind of spread out between like Boise, Meridian, Nampa. Like everywhere is pretty spread. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that depending on what town you're in. I'm sure, you know, if it's a more rural area, everybody's kind of spread out. And so it just, I think it kind of just gets in people's minds of like, oh, I might be the only one around for a, you know, like a big portion of distance. Like, and I don't know who else is around here.
How do you think that changes how a producer works or like their drive or anything like that? What effect do you think that has being an only person in a town potentially, because we have the internet, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I guess that's kind of what I've been trying to figure out. Cause like you'll hear about, like I think one of the biggest stories that I've heard about that is Judge Beats, who's this producer from Kansas who got a song placed with Young Thug, like, or maybe even like Keanu Beats, who's over in Australia, and he's getting placements with like Dreamville and Baby Keem and all them. Like, that's really what I've been trying to understand, is that like internet connection, because it's so different. Like I feel like I do pretty good when I meet people in person. Yeah. And you know, because that in itself is, I feel like, is a skill, being able to like be personable and network with people in person. But I feel like it translates really differently when you're like online, going like through Instagram DMs and stuff and emails. And I think that's kind of still what I'm trying to get a hold on, you know? Right.
So would you say then it's been easier to work with local artists than online artists in general?
I don't know. I would say probably it's actually been a little easier still to work with people not in the area. Just because everything that has happened with them has happened super quick. So like I worked with this guy named Hurricane Caesar out of Atlanta, and from when I sent him the beat to when he ended up putting out the project and stuff, I mean, it was probably a matter of like a few months is all.
Okay. Do you think that ties back into the Idaho mindset? Yeah. Things move a little slower in Boise, Idaho.
I think it's a lot different when you're in a place like Atlanta or whatever, and you're seeing all of these people put out projects and all of these people performing, like, you know, every other night, or like, I mean, because like I follow Hurricane on Instagram and stuff, and he's already done probably 6 shows, like, so just since his project release. Right. And so I think that once you're in a place like that and you're seeing all of the people and how fast they're moving, it's
more real.
Yeah, and how fast the music scene, you know, how like people put out just product after product, you know, all these projects and stuff. I think it kind of makes you be like, oh, I need to, you know, get moving too. And so I think maybe people tend to fall into that a little bit here in Boise, where it's like, oh, I don't really see what other people are doing. So, you know, I'm moving pretty fast, but in reality of how fast the music industry works and is the pace it's going at right now, it's not as fast as maybe they think it is.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like you might make a beat a week because your buddies made 2 beats last year and think, dang, I'm killing it. Mm-hmm. And then, but some guy in Atlanta's making like 10 beats a day.
Yeah.
Not that 10 beats a day is better than a beat a week, but just to see what people are actually doing or see what's really possible when people are like taking it serious. I kind of wonder though, do you think it's like a self-belief thing, or do you think it's a lack of like mentors and examples here? Because I mean, with the internet, I know that Nick Mira is making 10 beats a day in LA or whatever it is. So do you think it's up in producers' heads? Like, I'm just in a small city. I don't know if I can actually like do anything with this. I don't see anything. It's like less real to see someone like Nick Mira on the internet making beats and being successful versus like being there in the house and seeing it happen and seeing him get these record deals. Maybe I'm thinking like, I don't know. Do you think it's like a lack of self-belief, or do you think it's actually like the connections or the being down the street from the studio?
Man, I don't know. I feel like it probably has to do with, just not having that around you, not seeing it. Because if you think about people who have really broken into the music industry from Idaho, there's not a ton. I mean, there have been people who have had some success and stuff, but to the level of like, of someone being like, oh, I know that artist and they're from my hometown. Like, that's...
You've got to dig to find the popping artist or whatever in Idaho. It's not like if somebody named the song, you would go, oh, I didn't know they were from Idaho. You just wouldn't know the song.
Yeah, exactly. So I also think it has to do with probably just a lack of hip-hop awareness in the pop culture like that we have here in Boise, just because Idaho is, I mean, it's definitely a little bit behind on trends. I mean, if you go into a store, like you can see it even in like clothes. Like we're always a little bit behind. So I think that's kind of part of it too, is people are just a little behind, and that's fine because that's what happens as a city grows.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something I think about. Like, what if Murder Beats moved to Boise? Like, he's probably not going to start moving any different unless he's getting out of the game or something like that. Like, I don't know. Like, how would that change my mindset if I knew that there were major producers or major artists in the area, like getting myself out there, or like how much harder I'd be working? I wonder if sometimes if that would change. Just being over the internet is harder. It's less motivating than if like I met Murder Beats and he said, look, I came from a small town or something. Like, I don't know where he's actually from or whatever.
I believe he's from Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, what you're saying, because like, if you're thinking about like, even a place like Seattle, a few years ago, probably longer than that, but 10 years ago or whatever, you would not have thought of Seattle as being like a hip hop scene or whatever. But all of a sudden, like, Macklemore pops up there, and then all of a sudden Lil Mosey pops up there, and then and it's just like from there, I think you're right. I think people kind of see like, oh, these artists are from this area and they're popping off, or like Amine from like Portland, like, and it excites people, and it gets them like, oh, I can do it too. And then you want to like work so that you can one day work with that artist. And
so I think it's easy to want to go it alone and make a hit in your bedroom by yourself, and then have people like want to come to you, as opposed to building support with your local artists and local community, and then letting that kind of launch you in a way. What are your thoughts on one versus the other? Do you think it matters to build any at all locally now that you can have just like a hit on the internet?
I think it really goes both ways now because of the internet. It has influenced it in both ways. I think you can easily work with local people, local artists, and because of the internet, you can blow up off of this one song that goes crazy. By the same token, because of the internet, you can connect with people from wherever and blow up with them if they're in a bigger area or whatever.
Right. So what you're saying is there's not one way to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that is kind of the tricky part that we as producers have to deal with, because the grass is always greener, You're like kind of chasing, I think if I just work with, people outside of the city, I'll have a better chance. But then you're like, well, maybe I should work with the people in the city because we could have a hit, so it's hard.
100%. I definitely struggle with that. And so how do you decide like what to pursue? Because you have to, at the end of the day, you have to make a decision like, I'm going to focus in this area. I'm going to reach out to local artists. How do you make that decision? Because you don't know what's going to work, right? Do you think it's a guess?
I think it is, but I think it can be an educated guess if you want it to be. So kind of what I was realizing as I was going and kind of getting my name out there and stuff is one of the things I was realizing. I was like, people aren't really taking me seriously, which I don't blame them because they don't know me and they don't know who I am and they don't know what I have to offer. So I think going back to what you were saying about how I'm consistent online, I mean, that's the real reason why, is because I want people to be able to go to my profiles, whatever they are, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and be like, oh, he's consistent. Like he makes stuff. This is what he makes. This is what it sounds like. This is the different stuff he can do.
Right.
And I think that is probably why I'm so driven to do that, is I want people to see that.
Okay. So you're trying to accurately represent yourself online, basically, through what you're posting. Okay. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's probably good advice for anybody to do, just because even if you were lazy and you barely posted, but you talked about being lazy, I feel like, and like how you struggled with it, I feel like that's relatable to a lot of people who have a hard time posting kind of thing. So I think there's definitely a lot of value in that. So I was curious then, what does that look like? How does that fit in with a long-term goal, I guess? Are you looking for more of a major placement type thing, or are you looking more interested in developing artists, or does it matter to you, or have you even thought about what you for sure want to be doing in 5 or 10 years, whatever it is down the road?
Yeah, I thought a lot about which one I wanted to do and which one sounded more fun, and I was kind of going back and forth. But then I think in the end, I watched a Fader interview with Kenny Beats, and I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to Kenny, but he's a nice guy, very relatable. But he just said, he's like, I just like to make music for fun, and if it's not fun, I don't do it. So I think that's kind of what my mindset has been recently in the past few months, is it's like, I'm going to make this music that's fun to me with the people that I have fun making it with, and things will kind of just come from there. Like the beat that you and I made, where I sent you the loop and then you sent that back, and then the Valid Point asked for it. That was just fun.
Right.
And I just had fun doing sending that to you.
Right.
And it seemed like you had fun making it and sending it back, and then they liked it. So that's kind of been my mindset now, is I'm like, I'm just going to have fun, post what I think is fun, and I believe that, success will follow that.
Okay, that's really interesting, because to me that really parallels what you were saying about just putting yourself out there, like an accurate representation of yourself. Because if you're just doing the things that are fun to you and you're not worried so much about is this on the current trend, does this sound like whatever style beat that everybody's wanting right now, it's just what you want to make. And I think that is super valuable what I struggle with is like, how do you balance that with making, so how do you think that plays out long term? Because I have also seen artists, and I've definitely heard this, and maybe it's just a stereotype, but that artists just do like what they want to do, their purest art or whatever it is, and it doesn't go anywhere because they don't focus at all on like business aspects or like the business side of art and how they can actually like support themselves. Do you see that as a separate thing? Or, I mean, how do you look at that? Are you playing the long game and you're just going to let the pieces kind of fall into place how they make sense, but you're just going to keep pushing forward? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've kind of already made up in my mind mentally that I'm going to do music forever. Because, you know, I don't know. I mean, not to get like too deep or anything, but like I do kind of have the mindset of like life's pretty short. You know,
right?
I want to do what I want to do, you know, while I'm here. Right. So I think that plays a big part in that. So I've already made up my mind mentally that I'm going to do this for as long as it takes. But you know, on top of that, in terms of like the business side of things, just every producer ever that I've been following, at least it seems like, has always said that business is 80% of it and making beats is the other 20%. And that's why, you know, yeah, and that can change, of course, depending on, you know, like if you look at like internet money, like, you know, Taz handles most of the business stuff and the rest of them just do beats. But that's a pretty rare occurrence. So, yeah, I do think that that's also part of it is I have been, or I was for a while, lacking on the business side of things. And I didn't want that to come back and bite me.
So how do you get started? How did you get started in like figuring out some of that aspect of the business of music, whether it's like making a product that appeals to rappers or artists, or just like investing money back into your business or anything like that? Did you just like start looking for podcasts or something and try and get some ideas, or what was your approach when you realized you need to be a little more focused on the business side?
Yeah, I think I definitely started listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos, and I just wanted the basics. I think that's really important. I don't think that you need to go in being some kind of, you know, entertainment lawyer level, like knowing all the splits and the royalties and everything like that, because there's things that will do that for you, like song trust and stuff. But I do think you do have to have some entry level knowledge of like the music industry, what you're getting into, how splits work, because, you know, and I don't know all of it perfectly, but I mean, I would have an idea of if, I'm probably getting ripped off here, like, you know. So, and that's just kind of what my advice would be for everyone is just make sure that you have that knowledge going in at least.
Okay. How do you feel, kind of talking about the business and about Taz Taylor, how do you feel about having a team around you as a producer? Because a lot of times that's like a rapper thing, right? I feel like is getting a team together. Yeah. Do you think that's something producers should try and do?
Yeah, I mean, if it works, sure. I mean, I think as we've seen with internet money, there are people who dislike it or whatever, you know, and they have plenty of people who on the internet are very vocal about not liking internet money for, you know, whatever. And then there's been people to cycle through the group and stuff. So I do think it takes it just takes a different mindset, I think. I think you just kind of have to really realize, like, okay, it's a business, like, you know, and sure, you know, maybe you can have friends in it and stuff, but if someone is not doing what they're supposed to do or whatever, you know, I think you have to have someone who's willing to make the tough decisions and be like, this person is not going to be helping us any longer.
Right.
So I think it is tough. Yeah.
Have you thought about finding somebody and doing kind of like because you hear about, I mean, whether it's like Q Beats' brothers, right? Or kind of like producer duos, Day Trip, it's a couple guys. Have you thought about doing anything like that, or do you like the idea of just solo?
I made so the beat, just for a little background for everyone, I entered the Axe the Label contest, and I won that with a beat that me and my friend made, which it was just a beat contest hosted by Axe, which is weird, but yeah. And Zaytoven and Yachty picked the beats, which ones they liked, and so we got honorable mention in it. We were one of the top 8 or whatever winners of that beat contest, and I got really excited, and I was like, this is the start, like, this is the takeoff, and here we go. And I was all ready, and my friend was excited too, but I think just not quite as prepared to go full into it as I was, which is fine. I understand. I mean, he had a full-time, he has a full-time job, and he has a girlfriend and everything. So I think that made me a little apprehensive, just because that ended up, I don't even know if he does music anymore. I'm not sure. But so yeah, I was just a little bummed out by that.
Right. That makes sense. I guess I kind of look at it's very unofficial, but in a way, I feel like we almost have like a little bit of a partnership, just in that like we talk a lot, right? Do you feel like that is something that you would recommend to other people in a small town, or do you? Because we already kind of talked about it a little bit.
Definitely, I think finding those people that you connect with, not just in music, but also kind of in where you are in life, I think is pretty important. And I do think that, yeah, we kind of do have like a bit of a kind of connection or whatever in the music industry like that. And I mean, that's why I asked you to co-host this with me, because
that's how we're here.
I was like, if there's anybody that I want here and is going to make me, because I mean, I'm not going to lie, I'm thinking about it, I was a little nervous and apprehensive about starting a podcast and interviewing people and stuff, and I was like, well, who would I have with me that would make me feel like a little more confident and stuff, and like, so I was like, that's Luke. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. But being from a small town, I guess, or imagine like a smaller town, real small town, how do you think you connect? How would you go about, I guess maybe first talk a little bit about your process, because you had researched and found some local producers and artists, maybe like what you saw that worked for finding them and finding some that were maybe more serious, and then any thoughts on, I guess start there, and then maybe we can like scale it down and see if this was a tiny town, like would we have to travel kind of thing.
Yeah. Shoot, I found everyone from online,
which is hilarious, actually.
Yeah, but it was really hard. Like we were saying, it's really hard to find them online, some of the people. But yeah, I found the majority of people online, and I found them just like through Instagram and stuff. And I was kind of doing the thing where I would go and be like, well, who are they following? Like, and like go through their follows and following and followers. And then I think I also utilized SoundCloud, because I was back when SoundCloud, I mean, it's still a pretty big platform, but it was huge back when I was looking. And that was how I found YNM, actually, for Mountain Home.
Okay.
Yeah. I just typed in like Idaho or something, or like Boise or something, and they popped up.
Right.
And I listened, and I was like, oh, they sound pretty good. And then I just messaged them and went from there.
Right. So I think, one thing that you're saying that I'm hearing anyways, reading between the lines a little bit, is there's no music events here in Idaho, really. Not very few to none about like hip hop, but there are people here who are making it, making the music.
Yeah. It's like I was saying, like Hurricane Caesar in Atlanta, like he's already done like probably 6 shows or whatever for his project. And in that time, I think we've had 6 shows total of hip hop in Boise.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not that popular. I mean, like, people will go to the shows and stuff. Like, when Wi-Fi's funeral came, it was a pretty good turnout and stuff. And, like, but it's not to the point of, like, where we are still, where, like, the, you know, Idaho Center out in Nampa will sell out, like, because Kenny Chesney's here or whatever, you know, like, it's just not on the same level.
Yep. Yeah, and there's not, like, any kind of consistent local showcases or anything where you can connect with other creators.
And even the ones that I've seen that have happened, even when me and my brother were trying to do it, there just wasn't a lot of people that showed up. They're not really showing up for local people like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. I think it's just kind of a disconnect. The scene is disconnected, because I take back what I said. There are some local showcase shows and stuff like that. I think they're few and far between, and you won't always hear about it unless you, like, know somebody who knows somebody who's going to be playing there. And so it's kind of interesting how much you have to rely on social media to connect with local artists.
Yeah.
Which seems unexpected. But how does that differ from meeting with non-local artists? Like, at that point, is it any better to connect with the local artists versus if I'm putting in the work, tracking them down, messaging them, all this stuff online? Is it any better working with local artists who are maybe up and coming, maybe not as talented, whatever it may be, definitely don't have the following potentially as artists in other towns? Do you think it's worth it to just look elsewhere?
I mean, I guess yes and no. I mean, kind of, because I would say that I think it does help if they're local. So, like, you know, my best example that I'm going to keep going back to is Y&M. They're from Mountain Home, so they're far.
Right.
Like, it's like an hour drive or whatever from where
at least,
we are.
I think.
Yeah, but when they do come in to Boise and do shows, it's cool to be able to go and, like, meet up with them and talk and, like, kind of get to know each other a little better on that personal level. Whereas if you're working with someone who's completely out of state, I mean, you'll probably never meet them, at least not for a long time, and, you know, unless you both get, like, really big and then can, like, fly to see each other. But yeah, so I do think that it does help some, to be able to see them in person, talk to them, kind of get to know what they want and stuff, and you're on the same, like, time zone even. That might help,
right?
You know, because they'll be, like, in the studio and be like, hey, send us beats, and you'll be like, okay, and you'll know that you're not, like, late sending them or whatever, you know.
Right. How do you feel about, I'm not asking about any particular artist or anything, but finding quality artists can be hard in the area, I think, and finding a quality dedicated artist is, like, seems really hard, to be honest. How do they just kind of stand out to you when you follow what they're doing, or do you get discouraged, I guess, by trying to work with people and it just didn't turn out the way you had imagined? You sent them some beats and, oh, these are cool, we're gonna totally use these on our EP that drops in like 12 months kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to read that just because I've sent out so many beats to artists in their emails that, you know, I've never heard anything at all. Yeah. But it definitely does hit you different when it's like a local artist and they're like, oh, these are cool. Yeah. Like, can't wait to use these. And then nothing from there, you know, you don't hear anything ever. I think it kind of just goes back to what we were talking about, where it's like, you don't have that same level of output like in a place like Atlanta or New York or wherever, you know, even like Memphis right now. Like, there's just they're working at just such a crazy clip of like releasing music in those areas. And I think it's just kind of hard to really, for local artists. So, you know, I don't think that they're like not working as hard or anything. I just don't think they're working in the same mind frame, you know, because it's like a stream, you know, and coming from those cities, and I think it's just kind of hard to wrap your head around here. Right.
Do you see local artists who you think have that mindset, or do you just have to decide to be patient with local artists or not wait for them, just try and do like a shotgun blast versus like a single artist to work with?
I think there's definitely artists here that are getting into that mindset, of like, I need to have, because there's a lot more to it, obviously, also than just putting out projects. I mean, there's also like, does this artist know how to promo? Like, do they know that they need music videos? Do they know that they need to be posting correctly? Are they on the social medias, the correct social medias? So, because like I was looking at, I think it was Anthony Fantano was talking about like how much each streaming service pays, and it also had on the graph like how many people are on each streaming service, like the average person out of 100, and it was like YouTube was at the top. Like I think it was like 96 out of 100 people are on YouTube daily. But then their payout is very low, extremely low.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas something like Tidal, only like 4 out of the 100 people are on it, but their payout's the highest.
Right.
So I think that was just a really interesting way of looking at it and being like, okay, I need to figure out how to use all of these to my advantage. I need to be on YouTube with the music videos so that I'm connecting with all of these people, the millions of people who are going to see me, and then direct them to the streaming service that's going to be most beneficial to me. And so once you start looking at all of that stuff and how much goes into it, I don't blame artists, because it's hard.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Right.
But there's definitely artists from here that are getting on the music video game, that are, starting to really ratchet up their output of music. And, I think we'll start to see a lot more of that.
I definitely hope so. I think part of it too is probably just a little bit of people seeing some examples online, but then of like a Cole Bennett or whatever it is doing video, and then they get inspired to pick up a camera and start shooting music videos. But also just people coming in from out of town, out of state, and stuff like that. Who maybe are inclined already, and now all of a sudden they're like a bigger fish in a small pond. Do you think that's like, how important do you think that approach is to have something to set you apart? Because I would say there's a lot of artists here. How do you attract the good ones, or do you think you just have to seek them out? Do you think there's like, are you thinking, if I just have like the best beats, or I need to do like be able to record? I don't know if you've had artists ask you about if you do recording, that kind of thing. But when those good artists come along, how do you think the ones who are serious, the ones who have their social media straight or whatever it is, how do you get in with those guys?
Well, I think that's why, again, I've been so consistent and anal about how my, my social media is looking and my output, because I've noticed that as that has gone up, so has people approaching me that are serious about collaborating. Because like that was when I really started pushing it, was when I think I had just met you, and you were very serious about getting music done and stuff, and I don't even think I was at the level that I'm at now. And so I think even more, I'm going to start to, because I don't even know if I'm really seeking anyone out right now. I think it's kind of almost like a natural thing where people are just kind of gravitating towards the other people that they see are like, oh, well, this person is also working a lot, and so am I. And then so I've been able to connect with other producers that want to work as hard, and also other artists that, are wanting to work as hard as well.
How do you feel about using the fact that you're in a small town to your own advantage? Because you had talked about Boise moves slow, and what I see you saying is you're using that as an opportunity to stand out.
Yeah. I don't know if that's working. I'm just obviously maybe my narcissism is playing in here or wherever, where I'm like, yeah, I'm moving really fast and it's working out for me. But I do think that that's part of my motivation. Mm-hmm. So I think in that sense it's helping. But yeah, I am trying to stand out, I would say, and be like, you know, hey, I'm trying to step out of the box. You know, I'm trying to do a podcast, and I'm trying to meet these people, and I'm trying to have my output be a lot higher than, you know, maybe what I'm seeing. And yeah, and if that, like I said, if that's attracting people and drawing people to me because they also want to have this successful output of, you know, music and projects and stuff, then yeah, definitely.
I think that's super important, and I think that's a really smart strategy also. Instead of just being upset that people are moving slow, like a little bit, set an example, but then the people who are like kind of in the woodwork or in their bedroom or whatever are more likely to notice, like, I'm in here making songs every single day. I see Kana out there like posting beats and posting videos and stuff every single day. Like, he looks like he's as driven as I am. Maybe we can like pair up. And when we talk, it like gets into the way you talk about things. Like, you can tell that you're serious. How do you tell people like outside of your music friends that you work on music or anything like that? Like, how much does music, how much have you allowed it to kind of be real in your life? Because that was something that I had a little bit of a hard time with, is like, it can be, especially like I think rappers get a bad rap, no pun intended. Like, it sounds corny to say I'm a rapper a lot of times, especially in a city that has no rap music scene.
That was just being talked about actually on the Music Entrepreneur Club.
Oh, really?
Yeah, someone was like, what do you think about, because I guess Gary Vee went on this rant or whatever, kind of about people putting like rapper or like entrepreneur in their bio or whatever. Right. And so that was a big topic on there, so that's funny you ask that. But yeah, I think at first I was definitely like scared to, you know, admit like, and I've even met people from here who like, I know they rap and stuff, and when I ask them, oh, what do you do, they're kind of like, oh, I rap, you know, whatever. It's like, yeah, which, I mean, however you want to approach it, go for it. But for me, it's like, I am proud of the content that I put out. And I believe in my product, so I have no problem being like, yeah, I produce, I make music. If you want to hear it, you know, whatever. But, you know, I don't want to like be really like annoying about it, because I mean, there's also that line you can have where you're like, yeah, I'm a producer, let me play you my beat tape, and like, no one wants that. But yeah, no, I don't have a problem telling people. I even almost got my first job from. It was kind of sad that it fell through, but. Because me and my wife were in the wedding industry. That's what we do full time. And there was a DJ asking, because his friend wanted people to make like sound music bites for him for like a commercial clip. And I was talking with him, and I really wanted to do it because I was like, this sounds really cool and like a good opportunity. And he ended up going with someone else. But so even from there, you know, I'm not afraid to like be like, yeah, I do music. Like, yeah, let me try.
I think that's really good. I think like the DJ guy, opportunities do come up, and maybe it doesn't lead to something immediately, but it might be like somebody who isn't a rapper, but they know somebody or their cousin or whatever it is. So I think just being open and confident about it goes a long way. But that's also hard to do. It's hard to be confident in your music, I think, especially early on. Yeah. Like, did that just take time for you to build that confidence and be okay sending it out to people? Or did it take like a rapper that was like good to tell you that your beat is good? Or how did you kind of get over that self-doubt hurdle? Or have you gotten over it? Sounds like you're making good steps.
I don't think anyone ever really gets over it. I think even Nick Mira tweeted, he was like, I don't know how you guys go on and think that your beats are amazing, because I hear mine the next day and they're trash. And I feel that like on a personal level, because I'll go back and be like, man, this beat was so cool when I made it yesterday, and I'll listen and I'll be like, it's okay. Like, you know, even though it probably is good, but it's just like, it never sounds quite as good to you. But I think the way I got over it was just, I don't even know. It was just some blind thing where I was like, if this is really what I'm going to do, like, I'm going to have to go for it. Like, and I just forced myself. But I mean, I think that's why I was taking so long to make beats at first when I was starting out, was because that was part of just my anxiety, was like, I didn't want to make them and show people and stuff. But as I've started progressing and making them faster and faster, like, I think that's just me being like, okay, I'm finally getting over this mental block of like, my beats aren't good enough. They are. People will like them, and I just need to find those people. So
I don't want to jump too much into the conversation of music being objectively good or just subjectively good or anything like that. But I just kicked my water over on the carpet.
It's all good.
Do you think, I kind of wonder sometimes if the bad beats become a trend in some way or another. You know what I mean? Like somebody who has their hi-hats way too loud and obnoxious, or somebody who made their 808 way distorted, or going back to when like electric guitar, they distorted it and then it was like punk music or whatever. I don't know like all that history, but do you think the confidence is important for people to know if your music is even good?
Mm-hmm. I think that, I don't know if I said yes to that correctly, but I think like what you're saying is, and this has kind of just been, I think, part of the mindset that I've taken also, which is why it's helped me, is it's like literally there is someone for every beat. Like someone is going to think that one of your beats is good. Like obviously if it's like out of time and like you know, it's just absolute trash, then sure, yeah, you need to work on it. But like you're saying, you're going like to distorted 808s. People hated distorted 808s. Oh, your 808s are clipping. They're distorted. They sound gross. You need to fix them. Then we got the SoundCloud wave where it was like that was what you did, and like people wanted that sound. Or like, I mean, I don't know, just even in my own experience, I had a beat that it was super simple. I just looped like a couple of keys going down in like I don't know, just over and over. And I didn't know what it was, and it was kind of simple and kind of weird, and I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And that was how I connected with Hurricane, was he wanted that one.
Gotcha.
And I was like, and I thought it was absolute trash, because like I had sent it into a beat critique just to see what people thought of it. And I remember who the producer is, but I won't say who it was. But and he played it for like 10 seconds, and then he turned it off, and he's like, I don't know what that was. And he's like, you need to go back to the drawing board on that one. Like, that was trash. And I was like, and I felt horrible. And like, I didn't make beats for like 3 days after or whatever. You know, I just felt like so crushed. But then that was the one he wanted. And so I'm like, you know what? Like, there are no rules in any of this. Like, as long as you're making stuff that you appreciate, and, you know, and as long as it sounds somewhat within the scope of, you know, don't be like distorting everything. But yeah, I think there's something for everybody.
Yeah. I agree, even though it's hard still to like wrap my mind around that. And there's beats on my hard drive that are really hard for me to like put out in the world. How do you put that mindset of a person for every beat, or a beat for every person? I don't remember how you said it, but how do you practice that? Like, how does that affect how you send things out, or how you talk to people, other artists and stuff like that?
It definitely affects how I send stuff out and put stuff out. I mean, a lot of the beats that I've put up, I don't like, but I'm like, someone might, and I don't want that in the back of my head of, oh, if you'd put that out, what if someone had decided they liked it? And I don't want that what if. Okay. So that overrides my fear of being like, I don't like this.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So you don't, so the worry that somebody, do you think somebody could come to your page and like, this beat is really good, and then click on like another beat and be like, oof, you know, I don't want to work with this guy because not all his beats are good. Isn't that like ridiculous? I guess I'm just trying to think like, is there a downside to that mentality, or do you think it's just like the way to go?
If there is, I haven't found it.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know if that's how people operate. I think they just hear the one thing and are like, yes. Because like, I think this week I've already met with like 2 producers. You were at one of them, and we were working with them. And the second guy that I worked with, he had approached me before because he'd heard a beat that I had done, and he really liked it. And was like, we need to get together and work. Then he heard another one that I had done, was like, we really need to get together. So we made it happen, put it together, met up, made beats. I don't know that he's heard any of my other beats. I showed him some when we were there, some of my newer ones, but I don't think he went and really listened to any of my other ones.
Interesting.
And I think that's kind of how it goes. Like when Valid Point wanted that beat that we did, I don't think he listened to any of my other stuff. He's just like, I want that one because I like that one. Yeah. Like, so I don't think it really matters. I don't know.
That's a really interesting point, and I am curious if you think that that's a benefit of working with an artist more at your level, or if it matters. Because in my head, if I send a pack of 10 beats, let's say, to an artist who's like blowing up a little bit, right? They might get the email, they might even open the email and start clicking through beats, but if they get 3 beats in and they're totally not in their lane, right, then they might just close it out. But if it's a local artist and he maybe has 5 producers send him a beat all month, he's probably going to click through all those beats and find that one that sticks out to him. Do you think that, do you change your strategy of what beats you send to artists kind of based on their style or anything like that? Because I've heard a lot of stories about artists picking the beat that didn't line up with what most of their beats sound like.
Yeah, and I definitely try to keep that in mind, actually.
Okay.
So I'll kind of pick stuff that my rule is I don't want to inundate them. So I'll send them like 5, I think, or 6 is my max. And so I'll send 4 that I think are their sound, and then I'll send 2 that I just like and are new or something or whatever, and I made. And maybe they're not their sound per se, but I like them, and I think they sound cool, or I think the artist would sound cool on it.
Right.
And so that's kind of, how I go from there is I'm like, that's kind of my mindset to keep it a little out there, because in case they do pick that one, like you said.
Right. I think that's a cool idea. I might have to try that, because I'm usually trying too hard to pick beats that I think they sound like something they've done already. But I think a lot of artists, especially when an artist is kind of like has a sound that maybe they popped off with, a lot of times they're trying to try something a little bit different, or they're trying to find an artist or producer to work with who's unique. Yeah. They want to start the next wave. I think a lot of it. And so if they hear something that kind of catches their ear like that. But how would you describe your style? Can you describe your style and beats?
No. Yeah. I can't. I don't think I've found my sound, but I don't even know if finding your sound really is even applicable in today's day and age, because like of how everything is so ambiguous, and like kind of sounds have crossed over from, because like you used to be able to hear a sound and you'd be like, oh, they're an East Coast rapper, or oh, they're from Houston, right. Or, but it's not like that anymore. Like, because different people are taking sounds from different areas and stuff. And so I don't even know if it makes sense to really have like your own sound. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think, because I think I was on like Hitmaker's Instagram, and he had one where he was making like this really hard trap beat for, I think he was with like T Grizzly. And then in the next post, it was him making like a real like kind of East Coast sounding, because he was working with like Benny the Butcher and like West Side Gun. Yeah. So that's kind of my that always inspires me when I see that. As I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
Right.
Like he could just go and work with anyone,
Right.
and they're like, they know that he can just whip up whatever. Even Kenny Beats the Cave, like he's just making whatever thing comes to his head. Like it's so cool. So I do appreciate that. Yeah.
And he talks a lot about his like being a cool regular guy who's easy to work with. Like I guess you could even call those like the business side a little bit, but
Definitely,
it's not so much the hot beats. It's like, do I hate going to the studio to work with this producer because they're just not gonna go. If you're cool, you have like whatever, a nice studio, or you're just like nice to hang out with, I think can go a long way. And I think that that's important. And I'm curious if you have something that maybe this is going back, maybe I'm leading back to an old question, but is there anything when you send an artist beats that you want to stand out about you? Maybe something in your beats, or maybe something in just like you send them stuff every week or something and you're hoping they notice how much you're sending them? Or is there anything like that you feel like is a little bit defining for you that you hope the artist picks up on?
In terms of sending beats, I don't know if I can answer that, just because I'm not gonna lie, I have gotten a little discouraged over the past month or so about sending beats out.
Yeah.
So I haven't really been doing that as much as I should. But
do you want to talk, like, did something happen? Are you moving away from sending beats online, or it's just like...
No, it's just you get in that, rut of sending and not hearing anything, and you're just like, and you get down on yourself. And then, but also I did get an order for beats
nice.
From someone from, I believe he's from St. Louis.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Ramsey. He asked for a group of beats, so I sent him some.
That's awesome.
That was cool because he asked for kind of like Scarlord style.
Okay.
And I had never done that, so that was interesting to try and get out of my shell, and I really liked that.
Yeah. So he asked you, did he ask you specifically for something that was Scarlord style? Okay. Because I get artists asking me that too. Like, I'm riding this kind of wave right now. Do you have anything that sounds like that? Do you usually try to accommodate that, or is this a new venture where you're like, you know what, let me just try?
I always say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never said no.
How important do you think that is?
It's worked out so far.
Yeah. Do you then just jump in and figure it out?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I think that was one of the big things I took away. I think it was Murda Beats that was talking about it. People would be like, oh, do you have this? And he's like, yep. Even though he had none of it, but he went and made it. Like, so I think that's a big thing I try to do, is it's like if they ask me, because I think I told him, like, I was honest with him. I was straight up like, I was like, I've never done it, but I will give you a pack like within a week.
Yeah.
And then he was like, okay. And then I think I did it within a week or so, and I had a pack to him with about 4 or 5 like metal type beats.
Right.
So.
Did you debate on whether to tell him you had never made that style before?
No, because I do want, like I said, I do want to keep that personability. I want to be easy to talk to. I want to be open with the artists. So yeah, I just was like, yeah, just heads up, I haven't, but here you go. Like,
Do you think that affects how he listens to the beats when he gets them back?
No. I don't think so, because they turned out pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
They were good. I heard a few of them. Yeah, I agree. Maybe that's your new lane a little bit. I don't know.
It's pretty fun, but I am looking forward to going through the pack that you just sent too of loops. So
awesome. That would be
some of those.
Yeah, that would be
melodic ones. Exciting.
I'm planning to put together probably like a playlist or video or something of anyone who uses them, so that I'm really excited about. So we'll kind of probably wrap up really quick. I wondered if you had anything. How important do you think, because you mentioned you and your wife have kind of an event planning or wedding planning business, do you think that is important as far as having time and energy to put into music, how important is your job outside of music?
Well, it's super important. That is the only way we make money. I guess just to...
Let me clarify, I guess, the type of job, because I would say, or you've told me that you have more free time maybe than other people, or at times of year you have more time you can dedicate to music, and it's because of the nature of what you do. Do you recommend some other people try and find something where they can work like less hours as opposed to having more money to buy gear? Or not that that's the situation you're in where you could potentially work more, but how valuable do you think the time is in a up and coming producer, the time that they can spend and energy versus maybe having a better job, going to school, having like a career where they can live more comfortably or buy that better gear or anything like that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I definitely was one of those people that was kind of just like not taking music as seriously as I thought I was. And I think even J. Cole talked about this when he was making his very first mixtape. He didn't put it out until after college, even though his whole idea was he wanted to release it while he was in college, partly because he was going to college. And I did the same thing where I was like, I'm having fun. Like, I don't really need this right now. Like, whatever. And so I'll just do it later. And then when I was getting different jobs and stuff and making money, and I'm like, oh, I don't need, music's like fun, but yeah, I'm also making decent money at these jobs.
Right.
Like, yeah. But I think it was once I quit one of those jobs just because there was some stuff going on at the company and whatever. And then once you're kind of hit with that realization of, oh, I don't know that I'm going to like my next job. Like, I think that's when you really are like, do I want to do music? Like, is this just like a fun thing, or is this what I really want to do? And for me, it was like, yeah, this is what I really want to do. Like, so that was kind of when was like all about, it sounds dumb and cliche or whatever. That was when I was all about like following your dream and like doing what you want to do. And so I told my wife, I'm like, if you want to do a wedding and event planning business, like, go for it. And I will support you 100%. Like, and that's worked out. And luckily, and then now, I do have some more time. Like you said, it does affect gear. I can't go out and buy like sound banks and stuff and whatever, because we are a little tight on money just because it's a startup. So, but I haven't let that stop me. You find ways around that, like getting loops from other great producers and stuff. So right. That helps. And I don't have to worry about like buying, $600 Omnisphere or whatever. Right. So it's definitely what helps in like the mindset of like, this is what I want to do. This is how seriously I have to take it. I'll figure out how to make it work.
Right. Yeah. What is there anything any advice that Kana today would give to Kana back then when you were just deciding, when you left your job and realized, this is something that I want to pursue seriously? Is there anything that you felt like maybe held you up at the time, or was obstacles now that you've kind of broken through and have good advice for yourself back then?
I would just tell myself, work harder than you think you have to, and get over the mental hurdle a little quicker, because I got hung up, on, it took me 3 months to make a beat, because I was, and I wasn't even realizing it at the time, but I was just scared of how it was sounding and if it was good and, making it and whatever. So I would just definitely try to tell myself it's not that big a deal. And if you want to really, and if you're serious about this, like, you've got to try, like, you got to do it, because you're not going to like every job that you have.
Yeah. Are there any resources that you want to mention that were helpful for you or are helpful for you currently, just as far as like YouTube channels or podcasts or anything like that you want to mention? I'm in the part of the Music Entrepreneur Club on Facebook.
That's a pretty good page for everybody to follow. It's hosted by Dame, who used to run Funk Volume, and then DJ Payne 1. And then, of course, just following, producers who share a lot of knowledge about the industry and stuff, like Kato and DJ Payne 1 and Curtis and all them. As far as like YouTube channels and stuff, I mean, yeah, I like, Producer Grind and stuff. It's fun to listen to them. And I think, yeah, probably those have been the most helpful. DJ Payne 1, especially that was how I learned all about like how Song Trust works and so how to start putting your production into plugging it into songs and starting to get that revenue from royalties and whatnot.
Just found those by researching or watching other videos and seeing who they're mentioning.
Yeah, gotcha. Definitely. And then locally, being part of the Boise Beatmakers Club is very helpful in getting to know people.
Little plug there. I think we'll probably talk about that in a little bit.
We'll talk about that on the next episode. I'm going to be asking you the questions and definitely start to hear about that.
Any projects coming up you're excited about, or anything you're releasing soon you want to talk about real quick?
Man, let's see. It's always hard because you never know when stuff's going to start coming out. But yeah, I should have some projects. Like there should be some projects that have my production on it coming out in a little bit, hopefully. And then I've been trying to transfer my beats over to streaming services too, so people can listen to them there as well, and then go purchase them if you want on my track train, tracktrain.com/CanaBeats. And I have a Spotify playlist that I'm trying to get going called Beat Caviar, and want it to just be like a place where producers can artists can just put it on and start just listening to all kinds of different beats and freestyling over them, whatever, and figuring out where different producers are and what they have to offer.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. All right, cool. Well, I think that I know a lot more about you and got honestly some good ideas for just some kind of strategies about sending stuff out and working with artists and stuff like that, and a little bit of mindset stuff. So I really enjoyed the conversation. And isn't there anything else you want to say to wrap up? Or
just appreciate everyone who's listening. Make sure you follow us and rate us on Apple Podcasts. And we'll be coming back with a lot of cool stuff, talking with us, Q&As, interviews, all that. So yeah, make sure you're coming back, checking out the channel.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to some of the interviews that we'll be doing. So cool. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.